Murder by Numbers is pitched as Ace Attorney meets Picross. And you know what? Yeah, sometimes a game really can be boiled down like that. More specifically, the game really captures Ace Attorney's murder case narratives, outrageously over-the-top character work, and its investigation phase, which it spices up with Picross-style puzzles. Instead of just clicking around a room looking for evidence, you instead uncover clues Picross-style, and then question suspects about what you find to nail down what happened. And at the end of the day, Picross with a plot is a pretty good pitch that I'm down for, so let's see how it panned out. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're getting to the bottom of a murder case in Murder by Numbers.
Use your CPU, locate every clue, make the right connections, and we'll find what's true.
If you haven't noticed, this game is aggressively 90s. The fashion is definitely of its time, and half the soundtrack sounds about 2 steps away from featuring in a workout routine VHS. Which, weirdly, I like? But this isn't just any 90s. This is the LA movie scene, meaning glitz, glamour, and a whole soap opera's worth of behind-the-scenes skullduggery. And in the epicenter of it all is Honor, who just got fired from her acting gig literally minutes before her boss wound up dead. And that's not a great look for somebody who's considered a potential murder suspect, but it's all a-okay because Honor is totally a detective because she plays one on TV, and she also just bumped into this handy-dandy floating clue radar named Scout. So off she goes to prove her own innocence. So let's get the gameplay out of the way first. It's Picross. Okay, fine, I'll go into a little more detail. So if you haven't played Picross, it's a nifty puzzle game where you get this grid of empty lines, and then each row or column tells you how many spaces you need to fill in on it. So if it says 8, you need to fill in 8 spaces, and if it says 3, 3, you need to fill in 3 spaces twice on the same line, but they can't touch. The game is strikingly similar to Sudoku, where everything has its exact place and you fill in blanks through process of elimination based on what you've already discovered. Like for example how this 2-2 row already has filled in spaces on each side, so you know there can't be anything in between. And once you fill in those X's, you can look at the columns they're in, see that you need to fill in 2 1 blocks in each of them, and see that there's only one way they can possibly fit. And on, until voila, you finish the puzzle and reveal an object in the same shape. Murder by Numbers' greatest trick is making all this puzzling actually make sense narratively. In Picross, the fact that every puzzle turns into an orange or a tree or something is just a fun little quirk, but in Murder by Numbers, that quirk is recontextualized to carry additional meaning. Every puzzle is an object that Scout, your little machine buddy, is scanning, and they've come up with some pretty interesting stuff to scan, like mapping out the layout of an air duct system. Or this hacking minigame that put me on a timer and didn't let me cross out empty spaces, which had me in an absolute panic. But most of the time, the thing you're identifying is a clue of some sort that you can add to your inventory to ask someone about later. Which brings us to the other half of Murder by Numbers gameplay, which is pretty much a straight lift of Ace Attorney's investigation system. Poke around a small series of rooms looking for clues after a murder, chat up some larger-than-life personalities, then shove evidence in their face when they start dodging your questions. While Murder by Numbers doesn't quite hit the same highs as Ace Attorney in the animation department, which was a major source of that game's charm, I still found myself warming up to its characters pretty quickly anyway, because the big personalities to match those animations are spectacularly intact. Murder by Numbers has some absolutely fantastic writing going on. Allies are instantly lovable, and villains are so absolutely skin-crawlingly slimy and reprehensible that an editor would be tempted to call them unrealistic. Just, fuck this guy. Fuck literally every word that comes out of his mouth. But not every character is so eminently punchable, and the ones who do endear themselves to the player usually do so by dropping bombs like this. And yeah, this is my kind of humor. And then we've got our leading duo. Honor, being the POV character, mostly plays straight woman to everyone else's shenanigans, while Scout is your standard fish out of water. A lot of Murder by Numbers humor is derived from Scout, not really getting what social norms are, but he's working on it. Scout is very clearly the heart of Murder by Numbers' narrative, and while he's not my favorite character in the game by any stretch, he's still charming and growing on me by the minute. The murder cases themselves, it's a bit harder to talk about, mostly because I've only finished one of them. That one murder was a relatively straightforward one, but there were still moments where you could get it wrong, and let's be honest, the first mystery always has the fewest twists and turns. But ultimately, what has me hooked isn't the question of who done it, but the cast of characters each mystery gives you an excuse to interact with. But ultimately, what do you get out of 5 hours with Murder by Numbers? Well, after my 5-hour stint, I'm only just starting the second of 4 cases, which isn't as far along as I'd like to be, but still a reasonable enough length. It doesn't help that I committed to doing all the bonus puzzles you unlock outside the narrative as well, which is no doubt bloating my playtime because, whew, some of these bonus ones get tough. But I've been having an absolute blast throughout. The game maybe took an hour to really finish winding up and get me engaged, but since then, I haven't wanted to stop. Murder by Numbers is a straightforward sort of game that delivers exactly what it says it will on the tin. I can go into details about characters and gameplay all I want, but at the end of the day, if you heard me say Ace Attorney meets Picross in the first sentence and thought that sounded like a good idea, that's exactly what you're getting, so what are you waiting for? If either of these games are something you like, you'll definitely find something to love in their head-on collision. But even if you've never played either of its inspirations, Murder by Numbers is still an excellently written game that makes something new out of its individual parts, and it's worth checking out. If you haven't gotten to the bottom of enough mysteries yet, you can also check out my review of Outer Wilds Galactic Scale Puzzle Box. And coincidentally, I also had to solve a murder in last week's similarly narrative-focused but not remotely puzzly kingdom management game, Yes Your Grace. But I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.